Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Trigger warning. In this episode, we will be discussing miscarriage, loss, and pregnancy not coming to fruition. Today, I'm talking to Ginny, and we have the opportunity to discuss all of the different avenues that she has so far explored in her family creation journey. They have, as yet, been unsuccessful, and she is navigating how she feels and how she processes these emotions. We debunk some of the shoulds that are shared in the world, and we want everyone to understand that your path is your path, and no one can tell you how to do it correctly. Welcome. I am going to introduce you today to Ginny, who is a law of attraction coach, but more than that, she is a married person who has been thinking about family creation for some time with her spouse. And so there's a few reasons why I've asked you to be here today, Ginny. But first, let's start by having you tell us who you are and what you do and your family.
Just a little question there,
Those
Sam.
things, just those few things.
Well, first, thank you for having me on. It's a joy to connect with you. And I do a number of podcasts, but I've never really done one in this area. And that has been actually so personal to me. So it feels new and exciting. Who am I? I don't know. I'm a Canadian gal living in Florida.
Should we just say you're a queer Canadian gal living in Florida
Yes.
and let other people read between the lines on that one?
Yes, absolutely. I actually have a love for travel and moving around the world, and I identify a lot with being a nomad. And my husband and I, we actually tried that for a little bit, RV life on the road. It didn't go as we planned, but there are intentions for doing that again in the future. And so that feels like a big part of who I am too, just this lover of adventure and explorer and everything.
And you've mentioned your husband,
Yes.
and we're on a show that talks about queer family planning. Can you talk a little bit about your own experience with queer family planning?
Yes. Where shall I start? Like when we wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you know? When did you know?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. When we first got together, one of those things that even when was dating someone, acknowledging and asking that question, are kids important to you? Do you want to have kids? To me, that feels like a bit of a deal breaker when I was making those decisions of like, are we going to be together? Do we share a long-term vision? And
Mm,
so I knew early on that we both wanted to have a family, and we were very open to what or how. Him more open than me. I
okay.
uncovered I had a pretty like rigid plan. Like I thought I want to be pregnant. Like that was very important to me at some point. And at the same time, there was, so much of my own fears and doubts and hows around that.
Mhm.
But so, yeah, we talked about that from the beginning, and we got married. And the year after, I believe we started trying,
Mhm.
and we have quite a bit of a long journey. It's been, I think, in total 4-ish years, and we've had one pregnancy that ended in a miscarriage and one false negative, which was very exciting.
Mhm.
And so we don't have a child yet. And I know that we were chatting earlier
Mhm.
before about even just talking about that, but there has been quite a journey before that. We've tried all these different things.
As you started talking about, okay, we do want this, we're at the point now where it's time to start thinking about setting that plan in place. How did you go about making the decisions about how you would create your family? Was
Yeah.
it something you intuitively knew? Like, did you use a known donor or an unknown donor? Did you go through a fertility clinic? I mean, I've talked to people
Yes,
who,
yes, yes.
yes, yes, yes. Okay.
I'm just kidding. So, like I was saying, my partner is really open and he's just like, whatever, like, what do you want? Because we always knew that it was me that would carry. And he wasn't interested in that. I am interested in that. And so it was more like, okay, well, what are our options? And we maybe laid them out using someone we know. We didn't Neither of us knew someone that we would feel comfortable asking, okay, so let's go to a donor, found find a donor online. And I really don't know if a lot of people do this. Maybe you can tell me.
Mhm.
And sometimes I am a person that will just go ahead and do it without and really knowing if it's almost right. And
Yeah.
anyways, I'm like, can we just order sperm to our house? And my husband is like, I don't think we can do that. Like, why not? Why can't we do this? Anyways, we did that. I contacted an organization, paid for it, ordered it. I had to get actually a signed doctor's note from someone to be able to do that because they wanted to know I was like under care, which I wasn't.
Right.
But so we were
They just
just
don't
going,
want people willy-nilly, I guess, getting sperm donated to their
yes.
house, which really, unless you're using it for like the reasons it's intended to being shipped, why would
Yeah.
you want sperm
I
shipped to
don't
your
know.
house? I don't know.
I don't know. So we did that a couple times. It arrived in this big cryo tank and it was pretty cool. And then we tried that a few times just in our home on our own. And nothing took. But that was our introduction to the process and starting to track things. And so those were some of the things we did at first. And then when that didn't, nothing was kind of happening, and we were riding that roller coaster
Mhm.
of well, everybody listening to the podcast probably knows, like, you're, oh my gosh, you're gonna be okay. Oh, da, 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 da.
Yep. Up and down. Yeah.
Up
Yeah.
and down.
It's a
Yeah.
lot.
And it was a lot emotionally. And so we're like, okay, it felt, especially to my husband who brought this up, he's like, I feel like we're just throwing money away when we don't really know what we're doing.
Fair.
Can we take the next step? Can we go to a clinic and work with the clinic? And I had so much resistance to this. And this was something that I had to work through. So I heard from a very young age how easy it was for my mother to get pregnant and what great childbirth she had and how much she loves being a mother
Mm-hmm.
and the naturalness, how having a baby, quote unquote, naturally is like the good way. It's the
Right.
right way. I even remember 10 years or so ago, I used to be a personal trainer and I was working with someone and she was telling me about this. And I told her, I said, I don't know. I don't know if, because I was talking about having a baby, but how would I do it if I was gay? And she said, well, Ginny, there's lots of options for that. That's
Right.
what science is for.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Is that right? And I was like questioning that in myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go through that whole process, which I really love. Like, I really love self growth. It's what I teach, and taking challenges on as an opportunity to grow and, just connect more to and be more of who we are. Because I believe ultimately our truth is love. I believe ultimately we are unlimited, and
Mm-hmm.
that the things that get in our way are things we learn, like, or things we think, that aren't actually true for us. Like the idea that having a baby is more right if it's done in a hetero relationship. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just that. And so there was a lot of overcoming that for me. And many times during our fertility journey, I have said, hold on, I need space. Like, hold on, let's take a pause.
Mhm.
I don't want to rush into this action. I want to do this with awareness. I want to feel good about it. And so I think we took a pause at that point for me to kind of work through some things before then reached out to a clinic.
I will ask you to pause there for just a second because
Okay.
you've brought up a couple of things that I want to address. One of the first things that I want to address is that we don't realize, and as a parent myself, I don't realize what I've done to my own children, but our parents don't realize that the conversations they've had around us, not even just to us,
I
but
know.
sometimes just around us, affect our thinking for the rest of our lives. And they don't mean to do that. We never mean
Yeah.
to hurt our children or to scare our children or anything else. But when that's what we've heard, the messaging we've heard our whole life since we were little, then we can't, it takes a lot of reprogramming, as you're saying.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing that comes to my mind is you're talking about taking a pause. So I'll
Hmm.
ask you to address both of these things in just a moment, but you're talking about taking a pause when the reality of the situation is that for many people who are in the queer community, who get to a point where financially they think that they might be able to afford to pay to get pregnant, which now you're talking about going to a clinic, so there's going to be costs of involved. It's not just having vials of random sperm shipped to
Yeah.
your house, but it is actually going to a clinic and paying for support. Like, you're talking about taking a pause on something that we've been told we need to do it while we're young. We're told we need to do it while we're vibrant and healthy. And
Yeah.
pause means delay. Delay
Yeah.
means eggs are older. Delay
Yeah.
means like, when is this ever going to actually happen? So, how do
Yeah.
you reconcile taking a pause when you've been taught, again, another one of those messages we've received since we were children, that
Yeah.
you've got a clock that is ticking like a time bomb inside your system? So there you go. Those are two good questions. Have at her.
Well, that is one of the biggest fears that I had to overcome and move through. So, how I approach this stuff is like the fear is the thought we're thinking and the feeling we're feeling in our body, but that we have the power to create something new or different for ourselves. So
Mhm.
yes, there's the quote unquote reality that I am getting older, my eggs are getting older, but I won't attach the and I want to acknowledge there's been a journey to this. It hasn't been a
Sure,
snap your
100%.
fingers.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
But
Yeah.
anymore, I don't feel fear around getting older because I've conditioned and trained myself into the place where in this moment, if I can release that fear and tune into the truth that is here and present now, which is, I know I want a baby. I know there's love within me. And this would take some believing, training your belief as well. I believe I can't miss what's meant for me.
Right.
So if I mean, especially on this path of like bringing a life into the world, like this is not something we can control, no matter how much we want it. There
Right.
has to be an element of surrender. And so when I am choosing to take action or like give into the fear, then I'm the way I think about it is I'm almost creating more of that. Like I'm creating a journey of fear or struggle along the way. And one of my coaches actually told me this saying, and it's one of my favorites, is there's never a happy ending to an unhappy journey. Meaning, when we're thinking about energy and emotion, I can't be unhappy, 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 unhappy. And all of a sudden, when the child is born, turn happy. Like, yes, of course, I would be happy,
Right.
but it would be temporarily. And then I go back to my set point of unhappy.
Right.
And so I really took this opportunity to say, yeah, that's a real fear. I am getting older and I am getting older. I'm almost 40. So,
Oh, don't even. I'm in my
okay.
50s. That's
I
enough.
mean, 4 baby making
I know.
years.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And so, and every time there was a pause, it brought that fear up. But I chose to use that fear to help help free me from it, basically, I guess.
Yeah.
It also brought up every time I wanted to pause. My husband was like, "What? Why?" Like, because he's having a totally different experience,
Sure.
he has even less control over anything.
Sure.
He doesn't understand, fully what I'm experiencing. And then there's nothing he can do about it. So
Right.
for him, that's also as challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So that brought that up as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It
I
is,
don't.
it's a lot. And it is, as you say,
Mhm.
it's processing and navigating the emotions on all
Yeah.
sides,
Yes.
which is it, and it is, it's a lot. It is
Yeah.
a lot. So you've made the decision, or you, sorry, that you have made, but you
Mhm.
made the decision to then seek out some reproductive assistance.
Yes.
And how did that unfold?
So that was one of the ways I manifested my biggest fear,
Hmm.
which felt awful at the time. But I really resisted that path because I was scared of feeling alone, feeling treated like a number, not feeling cared for, respected, all of those things.
Hmm.
And that is kind of how my experience was. They, like, everything on the surface was fine. Another factor to this is it was in the middle of the pandemic that I started this.
Hmm.
And so I remember, so there was a lot of virtual, which I feel maybe that took out some of the connection.
Yep.
And then when I would go into the office and, everybody's masked, there's the glass, there's like no humanness to that. And that is what I didn't want in
Right.
my journey of making more love.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember there was the first time I did my first IUI. So we started with IUIs, and my husband couldn't come in the room. And I was just like, my heart was like, okay, Ginny, it's okay. It's okay. But it was hurting because I'm like, this is not how I want this to be. This is
Right.
not how I want this journey to be. And so, but I again would take every opportunity to kind of like, okay, you can release this resistance. You can make peace with this situation. There's opportunities for you to go. Keep going. Keep trusting your path. And it got to a place, I think we tried 3 or 4 IUIs, and nothing nothing. Like, there wasn't even a glimmer of a pregnancy.
Right.
And then my husband came out as trans in the middle of this journey. And so it, in a way, then we decided to take, okay, we're going to take another step back.
Right.
Because on one level, the doctors are saying, okay, it's going to be this whole other big investment, and we require this from you and more intensity. And for me, I'm like, I already don't trust you. I'm not going to go take another step forward with you.
Right.
So the timing of all this was actually worked out well, because then we could take a step back from that clinic, and we could then take some space. But it also, like, his transition at that time almost felt really wonderful, because it kind of made sense maybe why we didn't get pregnant yet.
Hmm.
Maybe there was some things that needed to fall into place, or are still falling into place. I mean, I really believe in divine timing,
Right.
since we can't control it. So
Sure.
yeah, so we got to then take a pause.
Another one of those scary pauses,
Yeah.
but necessary, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you said that, actually. And now that I'm speaking this out loud along this journey, that it's so valuable to take those pauses,
Hmm.
pause and reflect and tune in. Are we doing what we want to do? Are we still in alignment with this? Do we want to do it any different? How can we
Hmm.
best support each other this? Are we processing all these emotions? And even, is it still what we want? There was definitely times along that we said, and it may still be an option, like, oh, do we want to look at adoption? Do we want to go that route?
Mm-hmm.
And we were open to that and we explored it a little bit, but when it came down to it, the cost for was like the same or more for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And so because I do want to experience pregnancy, we continued along the path of fertility. Yeah.
Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know about babyREADY because you're listening to this podcast, so you know that we are all about queer family planning and helping you have the family of your dreams. But did you know that we don't abandon you once your baby arrives? We actually offer parenting coaching as well, and that's not just for the newborn phase, although we are there for that, but it's through toddlerhood and young children, tweens, and even through the teen years. When you need someone unbiased to lend an ear so that they can hear where your struggles truly are and help you come up with a path and a plan that feels truly right for you and your individual family, don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to be there for you. Visit us at www.babyready.info for more information. And that was another question I was going to ask. I mean, you have said you want to experience pregnancy, and I fully understand that. As someone who has been pregnant, I appreciate, and I mean, and I've been a birth worker for over 25 years. Ironically enough, we've discussed that I've been an educator for long enough that I taught somebody that you happen to know in Canada. But aside from all of that, there is something about feeling your body go through that. And so if you have the opportunity to feel your body do that, I can appreciate why that's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess then you have to get to a point yourself, within yourself, and with your spouse to determine what is the bigger. And for you right now, it's the idea still of potentially carrying a child. And if that doesn't happen, then looking at alternative options, because then that thing that seems the biggest of the biggest importance to you is the desire to parent a child.
Yes. We have both discussed that's the shared vision is being the gift of being able to love a child. Right. And experience that. We talk about it as just an expansion of love in our family, whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. And it coming back again to that thing, the decision to carry a baby or become a parent through adoption or another way, is I really had to question, like, am I putting my worthiness on this? Like, do I need to, am I going after this because I think I'm not good enough if I don't get pregnant?
Yep.
So that was a big one for me to go through. I remember the first realization of that in me, like I had just got a negative pregnancy test. I was sitting at home. I had the space. I was feeling and crying and letting it all out. And then I kind of like it kind of dropped in just the idea that, oh, if you don't have a baby, you're a failure. And I'm like, what? Where did this come from? I don't believe that. Like, I don't consciously believe that. And it was that unconscious stuff coming up. And I'm like, oh, this comes from, like I was saying, what I heard from my mom. I think she thinks that. Of course she doesn't, but that's what I interpreted from it.
But that's societal conditioning too, right? That's why we have little girl have pictures of little girls in advertisements carrying dolls around, and pictures of little boys carrying trucks around, and it's such a stereotype. But the truck is just a vehicle, whereas the little girl carrying a doll around, that's a depiction of a physical manifestation of a way a life can unfold. And so we're conditioned from a young age that that's the picture we should have for ourselves. And it isn't beneficial to anyone to be shoulded into anything.
I know. It was a big opening to realize and ask myself, do I actually want this? Or do I just want it because it's what I think should happen?
Mhm.
And I have many beautiful, powerful, lovely women around like that don't have children as examples. And I love that. And I have many who do have kids and queer friends who do have kids. And I love that there's that balance for me to be surrounded
Mhm.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's taken a ton of work on your part as an individual, and then I would assume for both of you together as a couple.
To be able to release that, like move beyond those. Yes.
Yeah.
Moving beyond those, limited or the societal ideas of what's right and really knowing what our truth is and then following it.
Right.
That's
But
actually
also
my,
knowing that your truth can change. It's an evolution just as every other part of our life is.
yes, yes. And honoring that,
Hmm.
that is
Hmm.
part of your truth, that it doesn't just stay the same. You
No.
can, like, you're more than one thing, you're more than, and you can evolve and expand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you find yourselves at the moment on the path of?
Well, let me tell you about the next part of the adventure.
Oh, right. Oh, yes. Yes, please do.
So after things had settled a little and we were feeling more kind of in tune with each other, again, we're like, okay, what are we going to do now? Where are we going to go? Because we're not going back to that clinic. That was a big heck no. And
Okay.
I put all my manifesting powers to work. And I said, I identified the things I wanted in a clinic. I wanted it to feel connected and supportive and like I was a person, like from the heart. And we started to explore clinics in other countries, for both the financial part and the experience part.
Mhm.
And it was at this time that we decided that we were going to sell our house and sell everything and go live on the road in an RV. And so I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And I found a clinic in Mexico, uh, Fertilidad Integral. Hopefully I said that right. And I fell in love with them. I loved the introduction call. I loved the nurse I was speaking with. She was actually pregnant at the time, and we connected and they were attentive. And it was 1/3 of the cost that it would be in the US, or what we got quoted for, anyways.
Mhm.
And so we're like, okay, we're going to be on the road. Let's go do IVF here. And we did that. And it was a little bit stressful getting there. We drove our RV through Mexico
Hmm.
into Mexico City. Oh man,
Okay. An RV in Mexico City.
an RV. It was a wild, wild adventure. And we did end up tearing the awning off of our, off of our RV. But anyways, this place was beautiful. It was everything. Like, it was the experience I was ready for and wanting from a clinic, from the support. Um, they knew everything that was going on, even though we don't speak the language fully, and a lot of their nurses didn't. It was so welcoming and everything stayed in order. So the first time when I was doing the IUIs in Mexico, in the US, nobody knew what was going on. Everybody was different. No one was tracking anything. I had to, kind of play that role of being in charge. And they'd be asking me questions that I don't know the answers to. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you guys are in charge of this. You are the professionals here. And
Mhm.
so in Mexico, they took care of everything. Everybody knew what was going on. The communication was amazing. And so we did a retrieval there. Um, and then we did one implantation, and then we came home because my husband's business, back to Florida because my husband's business required his attention. That's the one we got a false negative on. And it was so, oh my gosh, I still remember feeling so excited because we got the positive, and then 2 days later when we did the next HCG test, it was negative, and we're like, what happened? But that's the closest we've been. But then that was also like then another level of processing still the leftover stuff and disappointment and attachment. And I have just learned to be so compassionate with myself through this journey. And I just think it's the biggest gift this path has given me, because it almost feels like I can handle anything now.
And you probably can. I
Yeah.
mean, on some levels, for sure.
Yeah. And so again, taking just a couple months pause then, because just to feel and let it be, sort a few things out. We decided to stay in Florida because part of what was happening was we were feeling really just unsettled and nothing was grounded. And that was fine for me, but not for him, because I thrive when I'm like on that, but it wasn't supporting our well-being to
Right.
be so all over the place. And so then we went back, we just flew back to Mexico and did another implantation. And that, I mean, is that the right word? Am I even saying it right? Transfer.
No, I knew what you meant, but yes, I think they call
Yeah.
them transfers. Yeah.
And then that one took and I got pregnant, and it was so exciting, and it felt like our dreams were coming true, and the timing of it was really beautiful. It was right around my birthday. This was last year. And I was actually going back to Canada, where I'm from, to visit family and friends for my birthday, and we hadn't told anyone, and we were going to tell people, and then so I drove up to Canada. My husband flew up maybe like a few days later, and I picked him up at the airport, and it was that night. So talk about divine timing, right? Like I'm in like extreme pain driving to the airport to pick him up. And then we ended up at the hospital that night because I was having a miscarriage. But like, even though, of course, that's, nothing we want to experience again, I still feel there was so much value in it for me after I had processed it and been through it. And I know the rightness of it. I do feel like my little spirit baby was just saying hello and I'll see you later.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for him to be there and
Mhm.
at that time and be able to be with me through that. So there's so much in it. And
Mhm.
so since then, we have some embryos in Mexico that are available, and we're just waiting for the right time for us now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and grateful that it didn't happen when you were driving between Florida and Canada. It's
Right.
not a 15-minute jaunt. It's not even a 15-hour jaunt. So the
I
fact that you
told you I
didn't
like
have
to
to stop,
travel, right?
right? Yes, but traveling is one
Yeah.
thing. Traveling and getting to know the emergency departments in
Yes.
West Virginia are not necessarily the same
Yeah, you're
thing.
right. You basically picked that middle point.
Right?
It's true.
So it's a huge, that's a huge, I hate to use the word gift
It
because,
is. I do feel
but the
that.
fact that it happened the way that it did,
Yes.
I mean, you've got to be grateful for. I mean, that's huge.
I feel so blessed for the whole journey,
Yeah.
because of how I've grown and what we have learned about each other, my husband and I, like the ways we've grown together, the trust I've built, the compassion that's here. I feel 100% different about having a baby and than I did when we started 4 years ago or whatever. And I
Right.
know that this, up until this point, is going to make me a better parent. I know it. I hate, like, I'm more mature.
More life experience is more
Yeah, more life
maturity.
experience. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
100%. But so you are at a place where you're waiting for yourself to and your husband to say, okay, we're ready to embark on this again. And
Yes.
until that point, we're okay with where we are.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that I'm going to ask you to try and share to the best of your abilities, because you can only speak for yourself,
Hmm.
is how did you let yourself get to that place? Because I think that for people who are truly struggling with fertility,
Yeah.
who are experiencing loss after loss, who are terrified of taking the pause,
Yeah.
because if I take a pause, then that's an opportunity wasted. We're not acknowledging that maybe what I need is that downtime to heal a bit so that my body is more I'm more mentally ready for my body to receive the egg and or
Yeah.
the embryo.
Embryo.
Um, like how do you invite yourself to get to that place? Because I think that that's the piece that misses for so many people.
Yeah.
And many people won't get there. And that's their path, and that's not right or wrong or anything in between. It's
Yeah.
just their path. But can you provide some insight into
Oh my
that?
goodness. I don't know. It's so individual, I
Sure.
guess I just believe we have so much power to create the kind of experience we want. And I mean, all it starts, like, there's a lot of learning how to focus and how to speak to yourself and how to be with yourself in order to release all that stress and pressure and anxiety. Like, a lot of the work I do is a lot of the somatic stuff where if we're feeling emotions and those emotions are all built up and stuck in us, we've got to let them out. And that's our free and open channel to create a reality, but also to be the vessel for a baby
Mhm.
to come in. And how do you do that? I don't know. Just keep asking yourself questions. Keep getting to know who you are, who and what you want, and trusting yourself, like going inside. I think the more we know ourselves beyond our personality, beyond our
Right.
personality, the more we know, the easier it is to trust ourselves. And I call it in my work, it's a lot about like alignment. And that alignment or that feeling of being connected to the flow is all it comes from you knowing who you are, what's important to you, and then honoring that.
Mhm.
And that's sometimes opposite of what the world is telling you you should do. Oftentimes it's opposite.
Sure.
And so we don't get to find or create that alignment within ourselves if we're saying, if we're acting on, if I don't do this, I'm going to miss out, versus the idea like, what is true for me? Like, I'm creating a baby. There's lots of ways I can't miss it. Like,
Mhm.
and so it's a tricky question to explain, but it's
Mhm.
getting to know yourself and knowing you can create even just the possibility, like, what if it could be different? Is
Mhm.
enough to open up something, because we're always being guided. Things come into our life, people come into our life, we have inner guidance. And when we look to that instead of the outside world, I think we get so much more grounded in what's true.
There.
Yeah,
There. And it isn't to say that your path is the right path for all people, because everyone
100%.
approaches life differently.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you're not saying, well, you'll be fine if you just do these things, because that's not
No.
necessarily the case for all people. But this has been the right path for you and for
Yes.
your family moving forward. And I have a lot of respect for that. That
Yeah.
oftentimes, and I'm going to be quite frank for listeners, when you first connected with me and we talked about potentially having you on the show, I was very reluctant because
I
I
know.
didn't want to offend anyone who has truly struggled with fertility, who is emotionally really struggling with not being pregnant or not yet
Yeah.
creating the family that they were looking for. And I didn't want to share a story that they may feel makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, perhaps the reason that I feel like I need to share this story is so that people who need to hear it can hear it. And I believe, and I think that this is sort of similar to the thinking that you have, is I believe that the people who need to hear it will hear it
Mhm.
because it's out there.
And it probably will feel uncomfortable to a lot of people.
Sure.
I mean, it really depends where we are. I know if you would have told me in the middle of just getting heartbreaking news, this is for you. I'm like, F
Throat
you.
punch?
So it really, like, at the end of the day, it wherever we are, it is about being loving and being compassionate with ourselves. And that opens the door to everything.
100%.
Yeah. And we can, it's hard to do that when you're so pressured with how you should be and all the fears and all the ideas of what might not happen or what it means and all of that. But there's still the opportunity to just have compassion because you are human and perfect and having this beautifully awful experience, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If I have listeners, and I know that I do, who listen to this conversation and feel like, I think I need to spend a little bit of time working with this coach so that I can learn a little bit more about myself.
Yeah.
Can you tell listeners how they can find you?
Yes, sure. I mean, it's just my website is ginnygane.com, GINNYGANE. And then I hang out on Instagram too. So you can just send me a message.
Perfect.
Don't be shy.
No, and that's how we make connections, because that's how we learn and that's how we grow.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, you and I have a common connection from somebody I met first over 20 years ago, and I still have a connection to them, and you do, and see people's paths cross for a reason. So,
and I also would just love to hear from anyone who is on this journey. I had someone reach out to me. I posted something about the clinic we went to, and so this stranger to me reached out, and now we're connected, and we get to, like, even though it's, we share that part of the journey. So it's just so fun.
Yeah, it helps to not feel like you're operating in a silo.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what this podcast is so beautiful for that. Thank you.
No, that's my pleasure. It's if I can help people get the answers to the questions that they need so that they feel supported and empowered, then that's the purpose of the show.
Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.